Welcome back to Revelatorium, the podcast that comes around once a month, historically within the first few days, although this one is coming about a week late. I had extra time to revelate this month because I was unable to film. I was stuck in Cuba for a few days. I was already going to film this late, and then I ended up having my flight home canceled, and there was another one available for like many days. So through a comedy of errors, I come to you now. I never know how much of travel stories to disclose because I do tend to think that they're more interesting for the person that went through them than the people receiving them. But the table of people at dinner the night I got back to Havana from the airport seemed to enjoy my storytelling. So I'll just say this. I learned that my flight home from Cuba was canceled as I was lining up to board. And then they basically shuttled us out of the airport as a group of like 50 people. Wasn't able to get my visa back because I had already turned it in. You need a visa to go to Cuba. And then I was popped out onto the street, like where you grab a freaking taxi. And I was like, what do I do now? I have no idea how to reschedule my flight. There's no cell service in Cuba because of the blockade. I had no Wi-Fi, couldn't find anybody else on the flight. And then I hear over the loudspeaker, last call for the people on that flight to go to the information desk and get things handled. And I was like, where's the information desk? I was panicking, running around, people telling me to go up this escalator, down, over there, to the left, to the right. And I was just distraught. Then I found people on my flight, locked it down with the Cubans. They were also extremely confused. So it wasn't even like a language barrier situation. It was like literally there's no United employees in this airport. Who is going to help us? Then I found some English speaking folks from the US. They turned out to be a cast of characters. One guy was trying to smuggle home 700 cigars. And that's why he was on the flight, because it went through Houston instead of Miami and he thought they'd be more lenient. That's also a felony, by the way, like massive felony. Another lady I befriended and shared a taxi with was immensely wealthy from undisclosed reasons and was there just to salsa dance for 8 hours a day and get private lessons. She had just come off a stint of 2 months in London trying to find a man because apparently there's nobody well-to-do in Hawaii. And then before that, she was in India for 2 months doing yoga. So needless to say, we had so much in common. And then another guy with an eye patch gave me $100 in cash. So all in all, I was encouraged to write a memoir by one of the people there and got to spend a few more days in Cuba, which was a profound experience related to the sublime, even though I got sick my second day there, started having cold symptoms. So I basically masked like the entire trip and managed to not get my roommate sick, which was amazing. I lost my favorite pair of sunglasses that I've had for like 6 years. I stepped in poop water, but a man cleaned my foot with soap and water between the toes, like hand washed my foot and my shoe. Just a random guy in the street. And you may be thinking that is perverted. Well, I consider that to be a brave act of solidarity. And I consider that to be agape love for thy neighbor, love for thy community. It was incredible. I got ripped off by a taxi driver. I got sunburned for the first time in a year. I got my period 12 days early. It was a lot. But even all of that, like, could not outweigh how just prolific this trip was, which I think says something about the quality of my time there. Can you imagine if all that had not happened to me? I'd probably be overdosed on dopamine or something and like in a state of like hysteria. So you know what? I'm always about the reframe. So many of these things can be re-narrativized, such as losing my favorite pair of sunglasses. Well, you know what? I'm a loser. I lose things. And I've started to just characterize it by, hey, it's an end of an era. Like you were just meant to move on from that thing. It's time to step into your new style. And now I get to buy a pair of like Julia Roberts 90s sunglasses that I've been wanting to buy for a while, but I have not given myself the excuse because I already have a wireframe pair of sunglasses. So now I get to do that. So always find a way to, uplift yourself a little bit. I'm not saying you need to turn it into a positive situation. Most of those things are not overwhelmingly positive, but there's something to lift your spirit with every single one. But this month's revelations actually did not start out in Cuba. They started out in Canada, or rather digitally in Canada, because I saw this clip of this Canadian dating coach. Maybe some of you saw her. It was on TikTok. It's called like The Library Show or something. I'll put it in the show notes if I can remember. Also, while you're in the description, might as well give this show a rating, or if you're on YouTube, give it a like and a comment. The Revelatorium comment section, like I have my notifications on for this YouTube account and I don't for my other one. because otherwise I see bad faith internet gremlins that need to get a life. But the Revelatorium comments are always so insightful. So just know that I'm reading those, and leave more, because the whole point of this podcast is to be interactive. Like, it's wonderful how much, when I go through your survey responses every time, how many of you are like, I do this as a monthly ritual, and this is like so important to me, and it's a good outlet. And I'm just, through this and through the zine, I'm always trying to find ways to like make this more reciprocal, you see. But anyway, this dating coach, she was asking the guy interviewing her where he gets his self-worth from. This was part of like a dating eligibility quiz, like asking straight men like a set of 10 questions, and then she would basically score them and then tell him if he's like dating ready, essentially. And the question was like, where do you get your self-worth from? Accomplishments, or from like women being attracted to you, like female validation, basically. And without even giving away his answer, immediately I was like, those are the only two options? Like, it's a multiple choice, and you can only get your self-worth through your accomplishments or through like being sexually promising? Like, huh? And he ended up answering through my accomplishments, and she was like, good, check mark, that you get a point. But I was like, okay, so clearly in her system of thought, working hard and achieving things is preferable to being attractive, which maybe it is, but I'm here to sort of trouble this binary of like, okay, because I've tried both of those things, and it's in my experience, not one is like more helpful than the other. Like, neither of those things have brought me lasting self-worth. And then I started to ask myself, well, if I were to put other options there, what would I put? Like, where am I getting my self-worth from these days? Because overwhelmingly, it feels like, although economically I'm much more worthless right now, and like financially I'm a little bit stressed, and I feel a little bit misguided on, sort of how to approach my career at this point. Like, every day I feel so attached to my own like sense of self and worth and understanding what makes things worthwhile for me. And if I had to answer this, I would say pretty much self-expression is what gives me self-worth. I remember back in college, people would always ask me during like YouTube Q&As how I became so confident. And I've never been able to like break apart why that's the impression I give to people, because I never would describe myself as like a confident person. I'm definitely headstrong and outspoken. And I think the culmination of those two things is confidence, but like it still feels like I am insecure a lot of the time. So although outwardly, I put myself out there and I take risks and I don't let myself give up a lot of the time, I'm like, is that confident? Anyway, when they would ask me, I'd always just say probably through like journaling and writing. And I feel like the more I get to know myself, the more confident I can be, because I'm really in touch and like I have that self-intimacy. So I would say like self-expression through any outlet, like whether that be YouTube or my podcast or comedy or, even just like a good conversation, like putting myself in the position to share what I know and what I've learned with others makes me feel worthy. And tied to that, like showing up for myself. Like, for example, this podcast, like the fact that I just decided to do this, and it's been, 17 episodes, and I'm still going, when 90% of podcasts fail within the first 2 or 3 episodes, some statistic like that. I feel amazing. I'm like, this is wonderful. Like, I don't have a podcast network. I'm completely independent. I make like pennies off the show. Like, I'm not doing it for any other external reason other than just like this. It gives me something every month. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. So I think showing up for myself in these ways and like just giving myself the evidence that like I am worth it to show up, because it's kind of this circular reasoning. It's like I show up to prove it to myself that I'm worth it. And then I feel worth it because I look at all the times that I've showed up. Like, it just keeps propelling me forward. So, but self-worth is so personal. It's such a personal project that I wanted to hear from other people in my life and you guys as well. So I asked you in the survey this month. So if you want to hear other sources to put in the multiple choice answer, keep listening. Okay. So then we took our revelations to New York. This is a very nomadic revelatory stream of consciousness here, because we started out digitally in Canada. Now we're physically in New York City. I'm there to visit my beloved friends and be on the Eastern Seaboard for 3 to 4 days, which is the amount of time I've determined is worth it. Every time I've gone to New York before, which amounts to 2 times, I have gone for a week. And that is too damn long because halfway through every time I get sick. And as I already alluded to at the beginning of the episode, and as you may hear in my voice, I am recovering from congestion. And while it did not occur while I was in New York, I have a feeling I got it in New York because the second day in Cuba was when I started feeling like, oh shit, something's afoot. I did test negative for COVID, so there's that. What I will say though is I wish more people, when they were congested or have a cough, would wear a mask, because I'm like, do people not feel guilty for like spreading shit around? I'm like, what? Anyway, I was on the Eastern Seaboard. I was in my favorite time zone, Eastern Standard Time. I wish I could export it to the West Coast. And I know what you're saying. You could just wake up on like Eastern hours. Like you could just wake up at 5 a.m. But I'm like, no, the point is that the light on the West Coast doesn't align with Eastern time. Anyway, love being on that time zone. Love every damn person that I know in New York. Like these metropolises, LA, New York, filled with beloved people. Whenever people shit, especially on LA, I don't see this as much in New York, but like definitely in LA, people shit on like, oh, like it's a beautiful city, the weather's amazing, but like the people here are so fake and they suck. I'm like, it's actually the opposite for me. I'm like, the weather is not my type of weather in LA because it's too Groundhog's Day. Like I'm actually someone that enjoys how regulating seasons can be. They can be somewhat dysregulating, but it feels just, I don't know. I like seasons. I like change. I like seeing the novelty of it. Just the infrastructure, the lack of bikeability, walkability in LA is a problem for me. I'm like, the people are never what I go to. Like, I love my friends in LA. I'm like, the people I met while I was in LA and the people I continue to meet that live in LA are amazing and wonderful. So I'm like, what's going on here? Anyway, spent a lot of time with beautiful people in New York, and I stayed with my friend Jared, and he had kind of asked me what I did on the plane. And I had, on my flight over, I had, read some books. I'm reading Either Or by Elif Batuman, which I could speak for hours on. She's profound. Like, go, honestly, in my taking list from April, I should just say her interviews. I spent a lot of time watching her YouTube interviews about her first book and her second. She speaks a lot about like the difference between like fiction and autofiction, novels, sort of like the politics of all of that. And she's just so articulate and intelligent, and I get so much out of her. So I'm reading that, and then I'm also reading Arrangements in Blue, Notes on Loving and Living Alone, and we're reading that for my Patreon book club. So I have been meaning to just like let people know, because I feel like I don't do enough self promo on the book club, that we are reading that, and if you want to, it's not too late, because we're meeting twice this month. The first time to read, to discuss the first half of the book, and then the second time to discuss the second half. So patreon.com/kathrou. Anyway, read those on the plane, edited on the plane, and listened to Girls Next Level, which is also on my taking list. It's a podcast it's a rewatch podcast about Girls Next Door, which is a reality TV show that was on air starting in like 2005. I think it ran for 6 seasons, and my mom sat me down to watch almost every single episode of that show. It's about the women and the girlfriends of Hugh Hefner living in the Playboy Mansion. And if you think that's inappropriate for a girl of 9 or 10 years of age to be watching, you might be right. But seeing that on TV, it is the reason that I am the way I am. Okay. So I was telling Jared about that, and he was kind of like, whoa. And then I started sort of like listing off other shows that my mom raised me on, because I never watched like SpongeBob, but I was watching like Malcolm in the Middle, 30 Rock, Desperate Housewives, Sex and the City, and maybe most notably, but most forgettably for a lot of people, My Life on the D-List, which was a reality TV show about Kathy Griffin. My mom's taste is amazing when it comes to specifically like comedy and reality TV. Because reality TV, I have never, ever been a loyal patron or a viewer of like dating shows. Those have never clicked for me, except for in the early 2000s, like Tila Tequila. What was the one with Flava Flav? It was like, I don't know. Anyway, I watched the one with like I Love New York. I watched all of those because I was like a latchkey kid and I was home alone. I could do whatever I want from the hours of like 3 to 9 p.m. So I watched a lot of that. Those were good because they weren't so overproduced. So it seems I would actually love a Tila Tequila rewatch podcast. Is that there? I'll go find it. But my mom's taste in reality TV is like not dating shows. It's much more like Below Deck, like that type, Project Runway. And My Life on the D-List was like really a groundbreaking reality TV show. It literally won Emmys. And it's just such a like refreshing, like raw look at celebrity culture. And it's kind of like a diametric opposite from like the Kardashians. Although I will say the Kardashians, my mom also raised me on that. And we were there like season 1. My mom also was there season 1 of The Office, like episode 1 pilot. Like she has taste. And through her taste, I have realized how much of my humor can be sourced back to her. And I've been thinking a lot about like, yeah, the shows that our parents introduce us to, the media that our parents introduce us to, and how much that like does inform and shape our sense of humor or just our tastes largely. And I was asking Jared about that, and he'd said that, you know, there were some overlaps in his taste of, you know, sense of humor with his family, but he's like one of the funniest people I know. So I just wanted to see like, are you this funny because your family has just always been sort of like a comedic like support to you? Like your living, growing up at home was like living in a writer's room kind of thing. Because in my family, like we're definitely maybe on any level, like most connected by our humor. Like my mom and my sister and I will cry laughing. My dad is so like sweet and jovial, and so many things he does are silly and like humorous, and like he enjoys making his daughters laugh. And my sister and I do all of these ridiculous voices and like have all these, we have all of these, like we have our own familect, which was this term coined like last year, I think, which basically just means like all the inside jokes and sort of like references your family's able to make. And that is something that my family really, really draws upon. So I've been thinking a lot about like, cause I definitely feel like I am funny because of these types of TV shows. Like when I was rewatching, cause Jared and I ended up rewatching My Life on the D-List, I was rewatching it. He was watching it for the first time because most people don't know about that show. I was watching her, Kathy, on the show, and I was like, so much of kind of like my comedic character, like just sort of like the way that I present myself is sort of like related to her, because she is so damn outspoken and she's like fearless. She's so unafraid. Obviously, like she experienced a lot of retaliation for like how outspoken she is. Now she's kind of climbing back out of that hole. But she just, I don't know, she's such like a fiery person, and I just like really identified with that. So I've been on a little bit of a research study to determine like where people's sense of humor is sourced from. And I'm sure there's countless articles and research about this already, but how fun is it to do it anecdotally within you and your social circles? You know, reading is amazing, but how much more fun is it to just collectively talk about it and through conscious discussion, reach some sort of conclusion? Nothing better than that. Love to reach conclusions with my friends. Also, I just wanted to say, if you listen to these podcasts and would like to be helpful, there's so many ways to be helpful. This is like probably not the best way to be helpful. There's a lot more political projects that could use your help than this. But if you're already listening to this and you ever hear a timestamp or something that I say that you're like, oh, that's good and clippable, please let me know. Like literally DM me the timestamp, comment it on YouTube, whatever you got to do. Because I want to be more active on the Revelatorium Instagram, which we have. Go follow it and post more clips from the podcast. But by the time I record this for an hour and a half and then edit myself for like a couple hours, I do not want to go back a third time and find like the best high points of the episode. So if you find any like, you know, 10 second to like 2 minute sections of this podcast that you think would be worthwhile, or just made you laugh, or you got something out of, or were insightful, that would be so helpful. Just wanted to say that. Okay. The second finding that came out of my New York trip, like it was a business trip. It was an academic trip, actually. I didn't record a YouTube video there because I did last time, my man on the street video about friendships. So this time I was like, I don't want to work this trip. I just want to have fun. I'm only here for a few days, but still I couldn't help from doing some anthropological, you know, collection of data. And I had an amazing night where Jared took me out with a few of his friends and a coworker. And the coworker and her friend both ended up being Cather Out subscribers. And I was like, oh my God, I got oomps in New York. Like, this is amazing. And so we got to talk at the bar for like 2 hours about YouTube culture and all of the people that they watch that I also watch, people I've met, just talking about like parasocial dynamics and like reply guys. And it was so fulfilling and rejuvenating. Like, I like love when I get the opportunity to have a real conversation with people that watch me, because, you know, the algorithm drew us together, and oftentimes it was for a reason. Sometimes it is not, but oftentimes it is because we share some common way of understanding or thinking or being or knowing. And these two people were both from Brooklyn, okay, which was a rare opportunity for me because almost every single one of my friends in New York is a transplant, and almost like most people in New York are transplants. It's a city of 10 million people. Like, not everyone grew up there. That's the way it goes. I do have a few friends that I flew with from New York to Cuba, that one grew up in the Bronx and one grew up in Brooklyn. So like, it's a non-zero number of people that I know that grew up in New York, but I had not up until this point had a lot of time with them. So I'm asking them kind of about their own friendship dynamics. I'm like, I'm not going to record a man on the street video this time, but I'm just going to ask these questions off camera. Okay. And now I'm bringing them on camera in memory. So I had asked them, what percentage of your friends are transplants versus people like you that were born and raised here? And both of them said upwards of 90%. Like 90 to 95%, because they were actually there for a birthday party of like, 15, 20 people, 30 people. And it was a birthday party of someone they knew growing up there. And so it was like, it was a multiplying effect. Like, they were from New York. The birthday girl was from New York. All the birthday girls' friends were from New York. And I was like, oh, like this is something I've always theorized about, because me in Seattle, most of my friends are transplants, but I want to start to like even out the ratio. But it's the dynamics of making friends with like locals, people that are born and raised here as a transplant, are interesting. And for them, it was not necessarily that they were just averse to transplants. It was just that they don't have that many opportunities to meet them. Because when you grew up someplace, you kind of just stay in your circles. Like, you kind of just stay in your circles. And, my friend Jared is a transplant. He met the person through work. So it's like, work is a place that you could potentially meet some transplants, but it's like, there's, if you're meeting friends through friends, you're kind of going to stay in that pool. And I asked them, well, when you do meet a transplant, is it sort of like a platonic turnoff? Like, is it annoying? Are there certain things that they say that are unappealing to you? And they said, yeah, I mean, there's just a lack of understanding of like the culture of New York that makes there's like a little bit of a gap in like knowledge, They're either treating the city with like too much brimming, wide-eyed like awe, where it's sort of like idealizing it and not sort of like intermixing with it because you're like romanticizing it so much, which I'm definitely guilty of. And then with Seattle. And then there's also some transplants that are just shitting on it. And it's like, no person born and raised in a place wants to hear someone shitting on it because it just feels personal. It's like, well, this is the place I have like formed my identity. So what the hell, guys? But they were not like completely against it. It just like didn't come up very much for them. And then I asked Jared, and he'd said, the majority of his friends are transplants. And so I now get to take it to you all again. Isn't it so wonderful that we can hear specific anecdotal evidence of other people's relationship to this? All right, so now we've completed our New York leg of Revelatorium. Let's fly down to Cuba, which is where I spent what became 7 or 8 days with a group of 60 people, 58 of which I had never met before. So it was basically a summer camp type of situation. If you've never been to summer camp, I cannot explain it to you. And that was actually one of the most common questions I would ask people there is like, have you been to summer camp? Most of them actually had. I feel like now I meet a lot of people that had never been to summer camp, but a lot of them had been. So they were sort of like old hat, but also sort of the person that says yes to this kind of group trip where you might be going alone, you might know nobody, is usually the kind of person that has experience with that. But there's always a first time for it, which as an extrovert initially going into it, my intentions were I want to get to know the people that I organize with, because it was a trip that one of my friends that I know through like political organizing, she invited me on because she is an organizer for U.S. Hands Off Cuba, which is an organization based in LA and Cleveland that is working to end the blockade on Cuba. Because if you didn't know, Cuba had a socialist revolution decades ago, and the U.S. loves to stomp out any alternative political or economic systems so that we are only shown examples of our own ways. Like the U.S., it's called imperialism. And the U.S. likes to basically spread our way of thinking, similar to when we colonized this country, this land, and any indigenous ways of knowing were stomped out, you know? And it's like, why? Because the more I learn about indigeneity, the more I sort of find it way more intuitive than capitalism or a representative democracy, some of the ways that we're currently, you know, formed. So anyway, there's this really cruel blockade that has existed for 4 or 5 decades now. I should know after having spent a week there, basically sitting in a conference, sitting in different rooms, learning from educators and doctors and students about, you know, what life has been like there with all the sanctions. So I was there to be a part of this political delegation to, you know, show up as representatives of the U.S. who, you know, don't believe in the way that our government is treating them, and to bring medical supplies, to bring food, to bring a lot of different resources, and ultimately just solidarity and support for what they're doing. Going to the May Day celebration on the 1st of May, which is to celebrate the workers of the world. So many unions in Cuba, so many people in the Amazon labor union were there on the trip with us. So ultimately, so many people in Cuba and on this trip were politically aligned with me, which for the most part, like when I'm out and about in the world, certainly Seattle is like a left-leaning place, but I don't always feel that everyone around me has the same sort of like political consciousness. And sometimes that's due to lack of education, which is why I do the political work I do, which is to offer like free political education. But sometimes it's just because people, you know, they have their own ideas, and hell yeah, we should all be free thinkers. But I will say, like, being around a bunch of people that like are materialist thinkers and believe in collectivism, you know, are comrades. Like being around comrades, these people on the trip, when I got sick, I was being given Sudafed, I was being given tinctures. People were bringing me back their leftover food, writing the notes from like the meetings I'd missed that day on the takeout box. They were checking in on me. Like no one ever left each other behind when we were going out to dinner. We always invited any stragglers along. Like it was so like inspirational that I was like, if this is a microcosm of like the world that we could have, where people are actually working together and not afraid of each other and isolated and alienated and like living in fear, I would be euphoric. Like even just seeing the way the Cuban people treated me, which like I don't think most of the world should be treating, like, okay, I don't really believe this, but like I don't think most of the world should be treating people from the US well, given how we treat the rest of the world. Like it's not a secret that like Americans when we travel are typically like a blight. Do we spend money? Hell yeah. But do we treat the place with judgment and indignation and like disrespect? We do that too. But every single person there, the hotel workers, the people at restaurants, the taxi drivers, besides the one that scammed me, they like, it's not universal, of course. I'm not painting a utopia. Like obviously there's bad actors anywhere you go, but like it's just different when the like underlying like belief system is cooperative. It's much different than a summer camp of 60 people where you get there and maybe there's a lot of exclusion happening or people are reticent to show you respect and trust. It was like everyone on this trip, day one, showed up with trust, because it was like, these are all people that are politically active in their communities and trying to like achieve justice for the world. So it's like, these people are not going to try to like steal from you or be obtuse. Like they're trying to help. Even just when it came to like paying for meals or ice cream, or I forgot to bring money when we went to the market and people were happy to spot me and didn't even let me pay them back. Like there wasn't this sense of like, you owe me this and I owe me that, and this sort of like righteous, self-righteous, like hyper individualism. It's like, you know what goes around comes around. Like, we got each other. We're gonna be okay if we're together. And one person, it kind of clicked for me when one person was talking about the experience of going to the club the night before. Cause like, yes, we were going to like meetings all day, but like we're still socializing and enjoying each other's company. And like, we went to this gay club. It was drag night. Holy shit. I was like really impressed with the drag queen. I was like, damn, you're not able to like order any materials or supplies basically online, like everything. Like, she handmade everything. I was just so impressed. Anyway, we were like a group of like 35 people walking to that club. And what was incredible was that like, typically there's a lot of people that sort of think about a group project in college. There's typically one or two people that like take on most of the work, and then there's a bunch of slackers. If we did group projects on this trip, I genuinely believe that almost every single group, it would be pretty equal, the amount that people are contributing. Like, going out with organizers is amazing because everyone is so willing to volunteer for like, I'll get the taxi and I'll call this and I'll pull up the Google Maps and I'll search for like if there's a cover and I'll translate with the bouncer and I'll do this. I'll order drinks. Like, it was like, oh my God, it just didn't feel like the result of that night was dependent on me alone for like what I did. It was like, these people around me are, and I can't believe this is like a rare experience. I'm not saying that when I go out with my friends in the US, it's like a pitiful time where like everyone is really unhelpful. I'm just saying like, it was a stark contrast. The average person in the US just like doesn't have the amount of solidarity that people in Cuba do, because they're so strapped for resources, because we're stomping on them. They have to help each other out. There's more that I want to say on this, but I want to get to your guys' responses in a timely manner. So let me just say the last revelation of this month and a week was about phone usage, because I made a TikTok talking about another TikTok. That's how TikTok works. It's just people talking about TikToks on TikTok. And eventually there's going to be TikToks about people talking about TikTok from other people's TikToks. It was this guy on TikTok. He was like a highly sensitive person, and what really affected him was seeing people on their phones. Like, he felt that when he looked up on the subway and saw everyone looking at their phones, it felt like secondhand smoke. Like, the spiritual decay of looking at this little screen is so evident. Like, I don't like seeing everyone on their phones either. It's just like, I can't even name why it feels so horrible, but like, if everyone were reading a book or a newspaper, it would not feel that way. But somehow the phone, it just feels like, look at how many people are like beholden to this device, like that are sort of like, you're just pulled to it. And it feels like it's not willing a lot of the time. He was also talking about, watching a mother push her baby on a stroller or carry her baby and she's like on her phone. And it's like, it's fine. Like, she can't talk to the baby. It's in the carriage or in the stroller, but it's like, just being a child and seeing your parent, like, I didn't grow up, well, my dad is pretty addicted to his phone actually, but like growing up, for the most part, I didn't see my parents like paying more attention to their phone than me. But can you imagine how much worse off I would be? I'm already like short on attention as it is. Look at all the sources of it that I need. Like, can you imagine how much more insufferable I'd be if my parents were addicted to their phones while I was growing up? So he was kind of talking about like, your phone addiction doesn't just affect you. Like, it does have a magnifying effect, like secondhand smoke. Like, your cigarette addiction does impact other people. And a very timely cough there. I don't even know how much of my congestion from the trip was my own fault, or just because so many people on that trip smoked cigarettes and so many people in New York smoked cigarettes. I was like, oh, I love hanging out with queer communists, but like, why are so many of them addicted to nicotine? Like, it really holds me back, because I am very sensitive, and I don't want to, like, I want to hang out with you, but like, I don't like the smell of it. Sorry. I don't like the smell of it. And actually, I was listening to a podcast episode of Hidden Brain talking about cravings and helping people get over their cravings for nicotine specifically. The only thing the researcher found to help was having people, while the cigarette was in their mouth, answer, what does it taste like? Or what does it feel like? And then people would clock in for a moment into their consciousness. They would like get present for a moment. And they'd be like, oh, it doesn't taste good at all. It tastes bad. It tastes terrible. And they'd be like, whoa, I've been smoking for 15 years and I didn't realize it tasted bad. And that realization was like one of the most helpful things to prevent people from continuing it, was just like, when you are engaging with it, tap in and be present, which is hard to do when you're in the throes of an addiction, and see like what it actually feels like. And I think we could use some of that for our phone addictions. Like, usually what happens is just like the act of scrolling is so mesmerizing that you're not able to check in and be like, what does this feel like? And even when those TikTok ads pop up that are like, hey, you've been on TikTok for an hour straight, like take a break. Even those, I don't like taking a break. I like to just scroll right past. Like it is not, I don't have a positive relationship with my phone. There's positive things I get out of being on it, but like in general, me being in Cuba and not having cell service, like I only had Wi-Fi, not even in my hotel room, only in the hotel lobby. So you go to the hotel lobby and it'd be like a bunch of zombies on their phone. And then we'd be out during the day and everyone's lively, engaged. We're asking questions. We're getting to know each other, especially in an environment of new people. That's uncomfortable. Like, it's easier just to like go on your phone. You know, you get into the elevator, you don't know anybody on there. They're all strangers. You just go on your phone. That's like our crutch. But think about how powerful it would be to overcome that sort of social anxiety by actually just like physically getting through it and being like, let me just see how they're doing, ask how they're doing, and we'll see where it goes from there. Like, it was so powerful. I think the trip was so good partially because we got to clear ourselves of that phone addiction a little bit. But even when we be sitting in the lobby and we were back at the hotel, I found that I could kind of watch the A/B effect of like, or A/B test of like when you're out and socializing versus when you're socializing at the hotel for dinner or in the lobby. Like, having the phone there, you know, people just kind of turned to it, and then suddenly attention was diffuse. We weren't caring about each other the same way. It wasn't helpful. And the TikTok I made was that when you're sitting at a table, all the tables at dinner were 4-person tables. So when we were sitting at the dinner table at the hotel, 4 people, if one person pulls out their phone, there's 3 of you to engage in conversation. If another person pulls out their phone, suddenly it's a one-on-one conversation, which I'll just say it's a lot harder to keep up a one-on-one conversation than a 3-person conversation. Because if you need a beat to think about something, the other person can step in. That's what I've found to be true. If you think it's easier to have a one-on-one conversation, I'd like to know that though. Let me open up a channel to communicate and have more reciprocity. Okay. But if that third person caves and goes on their phone because they see that the other 2 people are going on their phone, then you're either left to be petty and just sit there in silence, like waiting for them to notice that you're not on your phone, or you have to go on your phone yourself, and then you've all lost the ability to connect. And this was a trip where we only had like what was supposed to be 5 or 6 days together. So it's like, we have a limited time. These aren't people that I'm going to see every week for 15 years. Like, maybe you feel like with your friends in your city, you can be a little bit more lackadaisical about it. But especially on this trip, it was like, we got limited time. You guys are awesome. I want to get to know you. Like, let's not do this. And I'm not saying I didn't spend any time on my phone, but I think like sitting alone on a chair in the lobby to go on my phone felt a lot better, because it was just like, you can see that like I'm having phone time. And I think even just naming, I need to go have some phone time, is better than just like having social time and then being on your phone. It's like, let's not do that. And some people on this trip were a lot more guilty of it than others. And we would notice and just kind of be like, well, that person's just kind of like, we got back this one night and one person told this like really, really intriguing, haunting story. And there was maybe 6 or 7, 8 of us sitting there. One person was kind of on their phone intermittently, or maybe 2 people were on their phone intermittently. One person was on his phone the entire time playing stuff out loud. And I was like, that's fucking rude, because this person's telling a story of something very personal and like traumatic actually. And you're just like completely checked out. Like, to me, if you're going to do that, just don't be in the circle. Like, people want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be in the social circle. And if the conversation is good, they can tap in. And if for some reason they don't feel compelled to tap in, they feel like they can tap out and still be there. I'm like, no, either like, and I actually feel like a narc when I talk about this. When I talked about it on TikTok, some people did not react kindly because they're addicted and they need to get a life. But Fortunately, when I had this conversation very candidly on the last night that we were there with a few people, they agreed that like, it's not a good feeling when you're hanging out with people and then they decide to go on their phone. It's like, am I boring? Am I not entertaining you enough? And at best, I'll just say, hey, like, what's going on? I'll be like, oh, what's going on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And then that'll get the person to check in and be present about what they are consuming. And if it's interesting, we'll talk about it. And if it's not, they'll close out of their phone and tap back into the conversation. Oh, the other person there did something a little bit different. She said one of her friends will just be like, screen check, and like everyone around the table, if they're all on their phones, they'll just hold up their phone and be like, this is what I'm looking at. And it'll be like some weird frog meme, and like someone else will be reading an article from The Cut, and someone else will have like, and so you'll just kind of like go around. It's like show and share presentation of like, here's what I'm on my phone about, which gets you, it kind of bridges it, because it's like you're still able to have your little device that you're addicted to, but you're still able to have that social engagement on top of it. So there are cutesy things to do, but I just want to start, I want to start propagating and proselytizing how we can like intervene in this sort of culture, because it was bad when I was in New York too. There were certain circles that I was in where I was like, ooh, I was bowling, and the group of people next to me, this group of women, they would bowl and then they'd sit down, go on their phone. The next person would go up, bowl, sit down, go on their phone. Like, it felt just so dystopian. I was just like, why are you guys bowling? Just go home and play Wii. Like, if you're just trying to be on your phone the whole time, it's not even a social outing at that point. It's just like, let me get out of the house to prove that I got out of the house. Like, I actually wish I could have asked them like what they got out of that experience. Like, I don't know. I just think any conversation I've had with like, okay, not any conversation with any person, but definitely the conversations I have with my friends and the people I meet and talk to when I'm traveling, those 100% always more entertaining than what I'm seeing on Instagram, because I don't even have to explain. I was going to explain why it is that way. I don't have to say because anything. You should understand that talking to people is better than being on your phone. Maybe I will. And now I'm like scared, because I'm like, are there people I need to explain that to? For me, it's like a conversation is so much more dynamic. You're able to like in real time, like improvise and ask things that you're curious about. And like there's ambient intimacy you can experience on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or wherever, but it's never going to be as bright as the in real life intimacy you can experience when you're talking to somebody. That's my revelatory roundup from Canada to New York to Cuba to beyond. And now I have like what sort of mirrors your guys' responses, a lot more taking this month than leaving. So maybe we'll just start with the leaving, get it out of the way. What I'm leaving in April is 75 Hard Crush Edition. I have taken a liking to applying 75 Hard to contexts of my life where I could employ it for good. Because if you're not familiar with 75 Hard, it's really about sort of like a very disciplined, almost like self-critical way of bettering yourself and achieving wellness. It's like drink 2 gallons of water, do 10 minutes of reading, I think it's 2 workouts a day, either 2 workouts a day or 1 workout and walking 10,000 steps, which even just walking 10,000 steps a day for 75 days straight, I don't think many of us could accomplish. There's going to be a couple days where it takes a long time to walk 10,000 steps. Like on average, I'll get anywhere between like 4 to 6 a day, but that's because I'm a pedestrian. I don't own a car. And the thing about the convention of 75 Hard is that if you miss anything in that list, or you'll also have to eat like really healthy, there's like other stuff involved, meditation for 10 minutes, like it's like way too much stacked on top of each other. If you miss any of those things any day, you have to start back at 0, which is horrifying. Like the amount of like, that just feels so punitive and sort of like punishing. But I like the idea of like going back to The Office, a show that my mom introduced me to. In the warehouse, they'd always have like a sign up, which is the sign that they have in most, OSHA certified places, where it's like 86 days without an accident. And then when you have an accident, it goes back to 0. That part of it I can get behind, because it's like a streak, right? Apps like Snapchat, Duolingo have co-opted the streak for like, user engagement. I'm like, let me just use it in a personal context. So for not the past 75, because I finished it about 10 days ago. But for most of April, I was in the latter half of my crush edition, 75 hard, which is where I didn't check up on my ex-crush for 75 days. So no looking at any of his social media, none of it. I did it. And I updated everybody on close friends. Everyone was so proud of me. I was so proud of myself. You know what? That gave me a lot of self-worth because I showed the hell up. I got through, did not miss a day. And now I still haven't checked. Like I still haven't because I just like don't feel the need to. It's not even because I gave myself permission to after the 75 and I still have not wanted to because I've just, it is that psychological principle of like 75 days is what you need to build a habit. And I'm like, now I'm good. I'm clean. So if you're a limerent like me, if you're a yearner, if you struggle with desire, try it out. Try it out. I'm also taking the bioregulation that a construction site can bring to your life. I don't know if you could hear it on this episode if it was audible. I didn't even want to call it out or give it a name, but I basically have been living next to a construction site for almost 2 months now, and I have not been catcalled a single time. So either that means I'm getting uglier or misogyny is getting a little better. It's getting a little better. Or it just means that OSHA's not giving these workers their mandated 15-minute breaks enough to actually even notice me. But these workers start at like 7 a.m. every morning, which means that I can no longer participate in my revenge bedtime procrastination. I can no longer rot away every night and be a miscreant and just like delay getting ready for bed. Because now it's like, if you do not get into bed at 11, you will not be rested. And so it's like, I can't make excuses anymore. It has kind of just like, they dropped the hammer and I'm done. It's been so good for me. It's been so good for me. I hate hearing the noise like during the day, but it has like completely reset my like schedule where I feel really regulated with my bio clock. And I obviously got off of it while I was traveling, but now I'm back and I'm like, well, back to it. Like, especially when I travel, when I come back, I'm usually a little bit like off kilter, but now I'm like, nope, need to get into it. I'm also taking being out as a whistler. I'm a whistler. I began whistling at the age of 12 because the person that I played first trumpet with was a whistler and it pissed me the hell off at an early age. So what did I do? I became the whistler. I'm like, if I can't stop it, I might as well do it more. And thus I have been whistling for probably 16, 17 years of my life. So I'm pretty proficient at it at this point. Really can hold a tune well. I can harmonize and go along with the melody. And up until this point, I'd kind of resisted doing it because I had classified it as annoying in my head. No one's actually ever told me that my whistling was annoying. So it is just sort of like an invented thought. If you think whistling is annoying, tell me. But also if you think good whistling is annoying, tell me, because my whistling is not bad. Okay. But on the street, like when I'm listening to music in my AirPods and I'm walking, I want to sing. Oops. And when people walk by my apartment and they sing out loud, I think it's wonderful. Actually, it's very awesome. Like I'm like, this is giving me so much awe. And I was walking behind this girl that was singing out loud, and I took a little video just for myself because it was actually so inspirational. I was like, I wish I could do that too, and I could, but I'm starting with the permission to whistle, and then maybe I'll get to that level of kooky where I'm singing on the street. I don't hear whistling that often, so it feels like I'm kind of alone in this, but there was a man on the street in Havana whistling, and I wanted to like stand there and harmonize with him, but we didn't have time. Okay. I'm also this is kind of getting back into hustle, grind, set mode. I'm kind of taking the Pomodoro method, unfortunately. This was something that I thought I left behind. I thought I left that in college, but no, I'm recognizing the importance of it reapplied to creative pursuits. Like I had a mega editing project for my video on turning 28, which is out now on my main channel. That video took so many hours, and it was like got to a point where it just kind of felt like there was no end in sight. But the Pomodoro method is like 25 minutes on, 5-minute break, and that just helped to give me some like release and like relief that it was like, okay, it's not like you get a break when you finish it. It's like you get breaks while you do it. So it's not surprising that works. But I saw a writer that I follow, Rebecca Jennings, used it to like finish one of her writing pieces. And I was like, you know what? Let me do this. And for long, sloggy things, it's very helpful. I'm also taking YouTube videos with 292 views on them titled Vulnerability Olympics. I don't know about you, but YouTube has been serving me so many small channels lately, and it's amazing. I'll see so many like very candid early YouTube style videos, someone on their webcam in their room just talking about some vulnerable topic, and I'll tap in. I'll watch them. I find them very refreshing and very amazing. I'm like, really, it makes me excited. It's very inspirational to me when I see other people expressing themselves and putting themselves out there like that. So that, and also the reclamation of pretension. I think I'm a little pretentious. I have my tastes. I have my likings. I'm kind of judgmental. I'm sort of discerning. It's like, I'm a little pretentious. But what's worse than a pretentious person that knows they're pretentious? A pretentious person that doesn't. So I'm like, I might as well just lean into it. I thought I'd left it behind when I started living this more like bohemian lifestyle, but lo and behold, you can not have a W-2 and dye your hair red, and you can still be pretentious. You really can. Also, okay, I know this episode's long, but like, just give it to me. Last taking is bringing back birthday cards as a compelling event to express sincerely to your friends what they mean to you. Like I've already established, I have a pretty strong sense of humor, as in like my humor really comes through. And I got to really come to terms with that on the trip when like people were recognizing that about me, like new people I'd never, it's not often that you get to meet like 55 new people and spend a week with them. So it was like really good little like vacuum experiment for like what are people's first impressions of me. And really my humor, I think, comes through, which I've like never thought of myself as a funny person. Even now doing comedy, like I've never thought of myself as funny, which it's probably just internalized misogyny. I like to have fun. I like to be funny. But anyway, I'm very playful, and like one thing that my comrades like pointed out was like they can't tell if I'm saying things earnestly or if it's a joke. And for me, it's like I kind of told them like it's usually both. But that made it even more sort of like necessary to me that I like really spell out to my friends what they mean to me without the comedic sensibility. And the best way to do that, I think, is through writing. Because my oral delivery of it can sound kind of like, the way I speak is just sort of, I don't know, like a little bit irreverent. But I wrote a birthday card for Jared, and then I'm doing a Mother's Day card for my mother. And I do have all my friends' birthdays, not all of them, but I'm like starting to put all my friends' birthdays into my Google Calendar. That was awesome to have this like past 2 years, because I don't check Facebook anymore, and it's hard to hold that many people's birthdays in your head, especially people you've met later in your life where you didn't grow up celebrating their birthday and you know really well when it is. Good to have those in there, but also even better I've started doing is a reminder like a week before to make and write a card and ship it and mail it, because mailing takes a while. It's not going to get there on time if you don't do it. Like if I don't write the card until the day of their birthday, it's going to be very belated, which is fine. But receiving something in the mail from your friend, it's like, that wasn't an accident. That wasn't an afterthought. They didn't do that because they saw your Instagram story and then it was your birthday that day. They did it because they like really treasure you and want to make you feel loved and special. And I want my friends to feel loved and special. So I'm starting to be better about that. But if you're a friend listening to this, like, hey, I didn't get a card on my birthday, I'm building it up. And if you want one, text me so I make sure I have your birthday, because I'm trying to make sure, but it's like not everybody has made it on the calendar yet. Okay. And since I was just mentioning humor, let's start with the question I asked you in the Revelatorium for April of, do you share a sense of humor with your family? How or how not? Helen, who's writing in from her bed because she's been sick the past few days, said, I definitely don't share a sense of humor with my brother. He never thinks anything I say is funny, and I don't particularly like his misogynistic jokes. This is an understatement. I hate those jokes, and I try to talk to him about them, but he just says I don't have a sense of humor and to let it go. I don't actually know what my brother's sense of humor is. We never really joke with each other, which is actually quite sad now that I think about it. My father and I have a very similar sense of humor. In general, he's the person I connect with the most in my family. This was one of the few sort of like dissenting responses, so I wanted to include it because I think I've heard this sentiment plenty of times. It's like, especially when your family members have different beliefs than you, the way that they can generate their humor oftentimes is from the media they watch. And if they're watching Andrew Tate and they're watching like all these nasty ass Twitch streamers, they're gonna have this like rotted sense of humor. And it's too bad he doesn't think you're funny, because I bet you are more funny than he is. And if he had like generated his sense of humor with you rather than with whatever misogynistic people he's been hanging out with or spending time with, he'd probably be better for it. Sarah, who's 24 in Alberta, Canada, said, absolutely, I share a sense of humor with my family. My parents are some of the funniest people I know, and my brother and I got both of their senses of humor. Making my family laugh is one of my favorite things in the world. This goes back to the question I asked last month, which was, do you prefer to laugh or to make other people laugh? And I would say, like, I didn't realize it until recently that like making my mom and my dad and my sister laugh is like very, very, very cherished to me. Like, those are the people I love, and like I want to bring them joy and happiness, and it does feel very like rewarding. And I think maybe some of my self-worth comes from being funny, like making people laugh. Maybe that's where some of it comes from. Christina, who's 23 in West Virginia, said, no, my mom is insanely conservative selectively, and anything I find funny or at least laughable, she deems inappropriate or depressive. And I'm sorry, dude, this is like disheartening to read. I appreciate you sharing it, because at least for me, like I do want to feel, at least for me, I want to feel understood by the people I love. I think that's probably a very common human motivation, is to feel understood by the people that you love, or maybe even the people that you don't. If I had to sort of like mask my sense of humor or jokes I wanted to tell around my family, I would feel stunted. And I don't think my family 100% gets my sense of humor. Like, for example, my mom introduced me to Fargo, another excellent watch. The woman just 10 out of 10. If she had a letterboxd, I'd follow the hell out of it. But she is more of a TV person than a movie person. Anyway, I started watching Fargo, and I was like, what kind of show is this? Because it seemed so genre bendy. Like, I was just like, is this a drama? It felt like I was watching Glee. I was like, it felt very not campy, but it felt very like almost cartoonish. And I was like, is this a comedy? Is this a satire? Because I was like, these accents, these Minnesota accents they're doing are so like outsized, felt hyperbolic, exaggerated kind of thing. She was like, no, it's real. It's very real. It's like, because in every episode of Fargo, they say this is based on a true story. But it's not. That's just a bit that they're doing. But it's like bit comprehension is at all-time lows these days. People don't understand my bits. And it's like, I don't think it's an issue if you don't understand someone's bit. But in general, people will think women are stupid before believing what they said was meant to be in jest and meant to be a joke. They're like, oh, that person's dumb. It's like, no. They could be making a joke. Let's think about that. She didn't realize that it was a comedy. And then I looked, and it's a dark comedy. It's meant to be laughed at. It's not meant to be taken 100% seriously. Like, it's sort of like Home Alone. Like, what? So I was like, I can't believe that we had different, like, understand, like our comprehension of this was like different. So my mom's politics are different than mine too. She's not conservative, but it would just make me feel dejected. And I can imagine it would make you feel dejected to not be able to share your whole self with your family. Sometimes I feel like I'm saying things that are so like generalized and universally true. And someone actually DM'd me on Tumblr to say that I'm naive because I take everything that people write in here at face value, and that they thought that people were making shit up to be outlandish and like buffoonish and like ridiculous, and that I was taking them sincerely when it was clearly like a lie. But I'm like, I don't know. Part of me is like, maybe I would rather be naive and like every single time I put these prompts out, I could probably answer these questions in my head based on like what I know. But it's like the whole point is like, what do I not know? What do I not know? I do not know everything. Okay. So even though I think it would make you feel dejected to not be able to show your whole self to your family, I'm not going to say that everyone feels that way because I don't know. I don't know. This is just a few dozen people. So I don't know. Just pisses me off when people think that they're all knowing. I'm like, you're not. We all lack so much education. And the only way to get that is by being open-minded and not like going into it with a narrow field of vision. Addie, who's 24 in Minneapolis, said, do I share a sense of humor with my family? With my siblings, absolutely. With my parents and extended family, no. Being a child of immigrants, I don't always find it easy to connect over humor with my relatives across the ocean. And I also like to examine this too, like where does culture travel across cultural bounds? Obviously being in Cuba, I was talking about this with my friend Brenda because she is Mexican American, and she's like, she speaks fluent Spanish, but taking her like Mexican sense of humor to Cuba, people like think that she's really sort of like cheeky, or like, I don't know how to explain it. Like they just like, it's funny. Like even though they speak the same language, it's not the same sense of humor. And I'm like, how the hell does a whole country how do we get to the point where a whole country, like British humor is different than, like, how does that happen? I want to know. Need to go back to school. Alex, who's 25 in Halifax, said, yes, I share a sense of humor with my family. We like to mispronounce things intentionally. I continue to do it now while I live with my boyfriend, and he does not get it, which I wanted to include this one because it's like, it makes you realize that you share a sense of humor with your family when you try to take it outside of that family unit and it doesn't translate. Like, I'm assuming you're saying, like, I remember on Drake and Josh, they would, I think it was Drake said South America and Josh was like South America. Personally, I love this bit. I think it's fun when people pronounce things in off-kilter ways because we say the same words day in, day out usually. I like to vary my vocab up and keep things fresh, but usually, you have your most commonly used words, might as well come up with fresh pronunciations of them as long as people understand what you're saying. It's fine. Okay, and as I consider that my self-worth might be partially from my humor, let's hear your responses to where do you source your self-worth from these days. Mole in the UK, who's 28, said, or maybe it's Mole, their self-worth is if my actions align with my values. On a small scale, i.e. clearing paths so disabled pavement users can move more easily in this world, and on a large scale, i.e. I work in the NHS here in England, and I like that my career is centered around helping people. When I feel like who I am and what I do are consistent, then I feel like a valuable member of the world. Huge, so big, and real. This is also a piece of it for me. I think I realized this on the trip is like the reason I liked being around these people so much is not just that they shared like ideologically. There were many ideological differences, on the trip. There's some Marxist-Leninists, there's some anarchists, there's some Trotskyists. Like there's so many different like dividing lines of like different political ideologies that you could side with. But your politics only, like, to me, my thing on it is my politics only matter as far as I act them out. Like, I can believe in this and this and that, but what am I doing in my real life? Like, it goes back to like, people getting pissed off because they have like a leftist roommate, but they never do their dishes or any of the household tasks. And it's like, if we're trying to build a more revolutionary world, like that has to start small with your family units, which actually isn't small, it's big. Like if you want to live collectively, then start being cooperative. And like on the trip, it wasn't just that people believed in a more cooperative, reciprocal society, like where everyone's in solidarity with each other. Day in, day out, I was just seeing how much solidarity existed, sharing sunscreen, buying food for people when you think that they're hungry. Like these might sound small, but it's like, it's really evident when someone like has these ideals, but then they don't live them out. There's this like dissonance there. And when I can close that gap as much as possible, I do feel a more like inherent sense of worth. Abigail who's 23 in Nassau, Bahamas, said, having the courage to take risks for what I want. For example, applying to grad school in Portugal and getting accepted, then going through the near impossible visa process after some confusion and finally getting it, starting songwriting and making music since I love it so much but never thought I could, just didn't think I could sing or write, and also recognizing my needs and fulfilling them. That's like a pretty accurate read on sort of like what I feel too, is like when I go for what I want, I feel worth. Like when I believe in myself and let myself go for those things, it's like, yes, giving myself permission to do that makes me feel like believing that I'm worthy and acting in that belief. It's you close the loop. You close the loop. Chloe, who's 19, who lives in one of my sister cities, says their self-worth is still wrapped up in my productivity and what I spend the day doing. I will go mental if I feel like I'm wasting a second. I know at the surface level how untrue this is, but believing something and embodying it are two different things. What I just said. I'd never look down on someone for how much they got done in a day. Do you have any tips on how to stop tying your worth to your output? So of course, like this was the position I was in not even 4 years ago. So there was a lot of beautiful, uplifting reasons that people felt self-worth. And then there's stuff like this, which is like, it was very reliably my sense of self-worth. And I had actually a lot of self-worth because I was very disciplined and very productive for like all of my like academic years. So it's not that it was like I was absent self-worth because of it. It just was like, I just didn't want to like feel like if I took a break from the grind that my whole esteem was going to collapse. I don't have tips for you other than just listening to the rest of these responses and seeing if any of them feel resonant. Like, are there little hidden ways you are getting self-worth that you're just not recognizing right now? And maybe you can pour more of yourself into those rather than your productivity and just start to siphon off the power. Okay, I'm just going to do a speed run of like these things. So someone said the respect I'm able to show and provide to others, whether I'm doing enough adventurous things that make me feel like I'm getting the most on my short time on this beautiful earth / making up for growing up in Ohio. My art, how I physically present, how I interact with people. It's a delicate balance with my art because it's easy to get sucked into how many likes it's getting on Instagram when trying to work out if I want to make some sort of career out of that. My physical appearance because I genuinely love putting effort into my clothes and hair because it makes me feel good, but can so easily slip into the world of comparing myself to others and criticizing my own body overall. How I interact with people because it's something I struggle with, so it takes quite a bit of effort and I can easily fall into beating myself up over how a particular interaction went. So yeah. It's hard to source it from, I'm like, is there any crystalline pool of self-worth that we can source and, dip our buckets into that's not going to splash back at us? Someone said, unfortunately, my ability to find jobs / fellowships as a soon graduated student. Womp womp. Yeah. Huge. Like your job giving you worth. Obviously, I've been through that too. Someone said, is it absurd to say that I feel like my self-worth is inherent? Like I don't draw my worth from success at work or in hobbies or from whether or not I have plans on a Friday night. Those things might impact my happiness, but I feel like we won't need to prove that we're worth existing. If anything, I feel worthy when I think about how awesome my friends are. The friends thing comes up again and again. It's like, if you are to look around and see who surrounds you and they're good, it's like, well, I must be doing something right, Someone said, honestly, Wellbutrin. Yeah. Writing and maintaining my social connections mostly. I also show up for my Frisbee team. So this is all showing up, expressing yourself, friendship. Like that seems to be like the thread here. Someone did say, I don't know that I have self-worth, LOL. So we're all in very different positions, okay? Moving on. Let's talk about transplant dynamics, shall we? Because I got to get some data from you all from both transplants and folks born and raised and rooted in the place they live. And I would say just really, really quickly scanning this from the transplant column, asking how many of their friends percentage-wise are transplants. We got 100%, 90%, 25 to 50, 95, 100, 75, 15. Some people just wrote the number but didn't specify what the number refers to. I feel like if it's 15%, that's probably people from there. Just thinking about it. 20% born and raised, 80% transplants, 75% transplants, 75, 50, 50, 85, 99%. Like, it's pretty consistently 2/3, at least. Most of them, I would say that the mode of that response was 75%. So pretty likely that if you're a transplant, you're going to be friends with transplants. Okay, so now for people that grew up in the place they live, how many of their friends or what percentage of your friends are also from there? Almost all, 50 to 65, pretty much 100%. Most are from here. Most of my friends who I met through work or are people I went to high school with are from here. One person saying 25% from, 75% transplants. A third, the last third being long distance. 80% are from here. So yeah, my hypothesis kind of proven true. Like, it's not looking likely that if you're a transplant, the majority of your friends would be locals. And if you're a local, the majority of your friends probably aren't transplants. But now the next question is, how do I get my numbers up? How do I get my ratio right? I want to know more locals. And the reason I do is because I want to localize myself to this place. I want to get to know it. I don't want to carry the stigma of being a transplant. I don't want to feel like I'm imposing on this place. I think the best way you can do that is by contributing to your community, by volunteering, doing mutual aid, showing up to political actions, like really, community meetings, like putting in that, getting to know your neighbors, showing up to local events. Like, I think all of that is a way to, really engross yourself in a place. But I still know that by me not knowing many like born and raised Seattleites, I'm missing out on like little spots and nooks and crannies and traditions and secrets that like I don't know, and maybe I'm not meant to know them until I'm here for longer. Like, I'm not trying to rush the process. Maybe it takes until I'm here for 8-10 years to like get that type of knowledge. But I will say, like, when I visit my friends in their hometowns, the experience is completely different than if I were to visit with nobody there, or if I were to visit a transplant. It's like visiting someone in their hometown, getting the hometown tour. Highly recommend. It's a remarkable experience. Because I could show you things in the Bay Area that like you're kind of not gonna like. I would assume you're not gonna find those just off the bat as a transplant. Maybe some of them have stumbled across them. Okay, and finally, let's round out with taking and leaving. Melissa, who's 27 in Seattle, said, "I should be leaving a lot, but I'm not ready to. Maybe in May." Amazing. Mia, who's 22 in Wanarua Land in Australia, is leaving, getting irritable for no reason. I discovered on my Cuba trip the power of blood sugar stability, because we did not get to eat super big meals in Cuba because they have to grow everything on the island. There's not a ton resource wise. And also just we were on a very tight schedule every day. So it's not like we had just a bunch of time to, stuff our faces. So I found that, with lack of sleep and low blood sugar, irritability can thrive. Those are the conditions that irritability thrive in. And so if you want to snuff out irritability, keep yourself fed and keep yourself rested. And a lot of people don't even know when their blood sugar is low. I find that especially men don't know when their blood sugar is low, and women know better. Anonymous, who's 26 in New York, said they're leaving being sick and traveling too much. Yeah, this felt relevant to me. It's always interesting to hear how people perceive your own travels, because a couple of the friends I met on this trip, like we were internet friends, so they didn't really know me, but like they follow me on social media. So they were like, "Oh, like you travel a lot, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I probably do. Like probably once a month have some sort of trip to like visit a friend. Like, I'm doing a little weekender trip within the state of Washington this month for a friend's birthday. I'm going to LA for a friend's baby shower. There's a lot of destinations I'm going to, but it's usually for like family or friends. Like it's not often that I just plan a trip just to travel. It's like usually I'm trying to spend time with people because I'm blessed to have so many long distance friends. What are people taking? Well, I loved this response from Quirked Up Shoddy, a very consistent respondent who is writing in from Your Perceived Reality. and is 27. And she said she's taking a newsletter from Letter Loop with responses from my old Girl Scout troop members. It's been 9 years since we've aged out of Girl Scouting. We are one of the rare breeds that stuck it out till the end. Yeah, like my troop, we had to like combine, and there was like multiple like reorgs basically in my like Girl Scouting, starting from like kindergarten to I think I quit when I was maybe end of middle school. I don't know, beginning of high school. I don't remember. Some good scouting friends that I'm still in contact with conjured up everyone's email addresses to collect responses. All 14 of us responded, which is rather impressive considering everyone's investment to the troop was more prominent than others, naturally so. And I found that such energy was reflected in the enthusiasm of everyone's responses, or lack thereof. It honestly felt like a revelatorium response to me, because in essence, it kind of was. I was surprised at how many photos I was featured in throughout the years, past and present. I've always been so grateful for scouting, as it's been one of the core groups I've had throughout my life that still affects me positively to this day on major and minor scales. I highly recommend Letter Loop to anyone looking to reconnect with friends. This specific newsletter will be sent out quarterly, and I'm looking forward to exploring more nuanced questions in the future. So if you listen to episode 16 ? I said that I was writing letters to friends on email, and this seems like a service that just sort of like sources those things up quarterly, which might be good. So I would enjoy doing that. I also think it's very sweet that I feel like Girl Scouts are the type of people to participate in something like that. Like not everyone wants to write a letter to their friends, but they do. Robin, who's 31 in Vancouver, said they're taking a new thing I'm trying out where I draw a tree every day for a year. I got the idea from a YouTuber called Struthless, where he suggests doing this if you find you sit around thinking instead of actually creating, which is what I've been doing. Yes. Anytime you can create rather than consume your own thoughts or media is so rewarding and like healing, and expressing yourself again gives me worth. Grace, who's 27, on her couch at 10:48 p.m. at night in Durham, North Carolina, said she's taking chewing gum, documenting when I chew on my cheeks, browsing chewing sensory toys, and deciding not to buy them because surely I don't need it, right? Right. And that's because she said she was leaving chewing on my cheeks. So here's time for me to come out as something else. Besides a whistler, I'm someone who chews on the side of my tongue. And this is like something you only know. It's a deeper cut. You'd have to have a high level of intimacy with me to know it, to notice it, and you'd have to stare at me for a while. It's kind of like when I'm focusing on something ambiently, I will chew on my tongue and I don't notice that I'm doing it until I watch. Like if I ever film a time lapse of me working on the computer, I'll see me doing it. And like I've had like exes before clock it. I've had people before clock it and ask like what I'm doing, because it's like it doesn't look familiar. Like the motion of it looks like it's just like, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, it's like a self-soothing little stim that I do. And I've never tried to rid myself of it because it's not like really affecting my life. Like similarly, I stim a lot by like separating my curl strands. That one I picked up from a friend, unfortunately. So be careful what your friends' stims are, because they are contagious. But I do like a little oral fixation. Like when we were in Cuba, they put these little fun, they had so many crazy straws in Cuba, and they also had little fun wands that they would like put in drinks. And I kept one of them and I just couldn't stop like, fondling it, just playing around with it. And it can be so rejuvenating, honestly. Abigail, who's 23 in Nassau, Bahamas, said she's taking the confidence of knowing that I'm ready to live in a big city. I went to New York and DC this month to start out my visa for grad school in Portugal, and those visits made me feel so sure in my decision to spend the next 2 years in a big city, Lisbon, and the excitement for what is to come, like trains and restaurants and bookstores and people. Also, my first crush in almost a year on someone in New York, so I won't be pursuing that, but it feels good to feel that spark again. Commentary on two fronts. 100% having a crush is a fun exercise. If nothing else, just that it reminds you that like you are alive, you're capable of feeling those feelings. It's not impossible. And even if it's not requited or like it works out, it's just nice to know that like to me, it's nice to know that I can like feel that way towards somebody. On the big city thing, it's like, I've realized, like I was talking about early in the episode, I'm not a metropolis girl. I knew that about myself. But like, I remember when I was living in LA, I was like, do I not like living in LA because it's a big city or because it's LA? And I think I've come to a point of like, 60% because it was LA, and 40% because it was a big city. Because usually when I travel, I don't travel for like seeing buildings. I travel for like land reverence. Like I want to go to a place and feel just so like awe inspired by the place and the natural beauty of it. And big cities in general don't provide me that like a medium-sized city or a mountain town or true wilderness does. So it's exciting to know what works for you. And there's so much that a big city can bring and so many opportunities. Christina, who's 23 in West Virginia, said she's taking exploration into activism. I've found my passion with social justice and the current media platforms and really want to start diving deeper into what I can do for the things I believe in. And I'm so excited to hear folks like find their place within movements. I am going to link a fundraiser to help get a few families out of Gaza in the show notes. Wish I made money off this podcast just so that I could like use it as a donation fundraiser myself. But yeah, the escalation of the genocide has just been truly haunting day in, day out. And with the number of student encampments around the country, there are just so many outlets now to directly plug yourself into spaces and bring aid, show up, be a body, whatnot. And yeah, I'm still trying to find my own sort of like, I don't have like a political affiliation in Seattle. Like I'm not a part of like any org. I'm a part of like an online org that's not like Seattle based. So that is my current outlet. But if you don't have an outlet, like definitely exploration is a great mindset to be in. Like just explore it with an open mind and see what connects with you. Hannah, who's 21 on her big pink couch, is taking meaningful conversations with my friends that I normally just laugh with. And I have been meditating on this as well the past month, that there's a lot of people out there that are like irony poisoned, where they're not able to say anything with sincerity. And I think that I am somewhat this way. I think that I'm actually a very earnest person, but again, the playful way that I like deliver things takes away some of the like pure sincerity and makes it a little bit tongue in cheek. But it's like frustrating to me if I have a friendship where I feel like the person never really opens up. They only want to laugh and like be jokey. It's like I'm looking for some way to connect and be serious, and that like being able to play to that duality within yourself is like attractive to me, rather than just like everything's a joke, or honestly, if everything's sincere, I don't quite like that either. So very special to bridge that with your friendships. Okay, we're going to leave it there because it sounds like there's some sort of construction work trying to censor me. I'm feeling just so tardy this month with this episode, but there are so many other things to focus on and devote your attention towards. If you spent this time with me, thank you. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, let me know what any of your takeaways from this episode were. And again, if you wouldn't mind being a little bit of a, record keeper and denoting any timestamps that you think I should clip for Instagram and TikTok and whatnot, put those in my Instagram DMs or put them in the comment section of the Revelatorium YouTube channel. So thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time, and Cather out.